For years, my wife mocked me as her family laughed. So on Christmas night, I handed her divorce papers at the dinner table and walked away forever. I got married at 34, thinking I had it all figured out. Love was meant to be about patience, compromise, and creating something meaningful together. She was stunning, charismatic, and came from this big, tight-knit family that always had a reason to get together. That kind of closeness was something I had missed out on growing up. My dad passed away when I was young, and my mom worked really hard to support me and my siblings. Our holidays were pretty low-key and didn't come with the traditions that required everyone to be there at once. So marrying into her family felt like a chance to fill that gap I'd been missing. Initially, I really enjoyed family dinners. There was laughter, tables overflowing with food, and stories from relatives whose names I was still trying to memorize. They made me feel welcome, or at least that's how it felt. I thought their teasing was just their way of being affectionate. It was different from what I was used to, but it didn't seem harmful. However, over time, small cracks started to show, mostly coming from my wife herself. It began with offhand comments at the dinner table, usually followed by a laugh. She'd say things like, "Don't mind him. He's awful at fixing things. He's just lucky I married him." The first few times, I chuckled along with everyone else, convincing myself it was just her playful side. Maybe it was her family's humor, and I was being too touchy. But even then, something about how she said it stuck with me long after the dinner ended. There was no warmth in her tone. It felt sharper, like she wanted others to remember the joke was more than just a joke. Still, I brushed it off. She had this incredible way of lighting up a room, and her family adored her. Compared to that, I was the quieter one, the one who didn't shine as brightly. Maybe her comments were just her way of filling in the gaps. But as the weeks turned into months, the jokes didn't stop. They followed me to birthdays, barbecues, and weekend brunches. That's when I noticed a pattern. She never teased her siblings or made her parents the butt of a joke. It was only me. I was left thinking I had married into a family that would finally provide the warmth and traditions I was looking for, but slowly realized that their warmth often came at my expense. Every time I thought about bringing it up, I'd talk myself out of it. Don't ruin the moment. Don't overthink it. Just let it slide. Yet, deep down, I couldn't shake the question. If this is what love and family closeness are supposed to feel like, then why do I feel so small? At first, I convinced myself it was all in good fun. Everyone laughed when she made her little digs, so why shouldn't I? If I didn't laugh, I thought I'd come off as uptight or insecure. So I played along, plastered a smile on my face, let the chuckles wash over me, and swallowed down the stings that lingered afterward. But those jokes didn't just fade away. They grew sharper and followed me into more intimate spaces. Casual lunches with her parents, lazy Sundays with her siblings, even weddings or baby showers with her cousins. She took that same narrative everywhere. She was the prize and I was the lucky one tagging along. I remember one Thanksgiving vividly. We were at her uncle's long dining table, plates overflowing, wine glasses clinking. I had just received praise for something I had worked hard on, and her uncle raised a glass to acknowledge me. It was one of those rare moments where I felt truly appreciated. Then, out of nowhere, she jumped in loud enough for everyone to hear. Yeah, he should be thankful I even married him. Without me, who would want him? The table erupted in laughter. I forced myself to smile and maybe even let out a weak chuckle while inside I was seething. I could feel my cheeks burning as I reached for my drink, trying to mask the humiliation. To them, it was just another part of the entertainment. Later that night, I finally confronted her. I shared how it felt to be cut down in front of everyone and how small it made me feel when she turned my life into a punchline. Her response? Rolling her eyes. "You're too sensitive," she laughed. "My family knows I'm joking. Stop being so dramatic." I sat there, shocked. It wasn't just the words. It was the way she dismissed me like I was just some child whining about nothing. And that's when a troubling thought crept in. Maybe she actually believed it, that I should be grateful she chose me. I tried to brush it off, convincing myself she was just oblivious, not cruel. All couples have quirks, I thought, and maybe this was just ours. But deep down, I knew better. This wasn't merely teasing anymore. It was shaping how others saw me, slowly eroding my dignity in the very place I had hoped to belong. Every time I tried to push back, she would tell me the same thing: "You're overreacting. It's just a joke." The laughter might have faded from the room, but it never stopped echoing in my mind. After that Thanksgiving, I began paying closer attention. I noticed that her jokes weren't really jokes. They were reminders to her family, maybe even to me, of who supposedly held the upper hand in our marriage. And every time I pushed back, she made me feel like the problem. If I showed hurt, she called me weak. If I stayed quiet, I was boring. If I defended myself, I was being dramatic. No matter what I did, she twisted it so it looked like she was untouchable, and I was just the overly sensitive husband who couldn't take a joke. Her favorite line was, "Don't forget, my family will always have my back." At first, I dismissed it as a flippant comment, but it became clear she meant it. Every time I tried talking to her family about how things were going, the response was always the same: a shrug, a laugh, or a half-hearted, "Oh, you know how she is. She's just teasing." They didn't take me seriously. I felt outnumbered and outmaneuvered, and most importantly, dismissed before I could even finish explaining myself. The teasing gradually morphed into sharper insults. Instead of poking fun at little things, she targeted who I was as a person. By the 6th year of our marriage, I barely recognized myself. I wasn't some weak man. I had my own life, my own responsibilities, my own accomplishments. But in her family's orbit, it felt like I was reduced to nothing more than the punchline of her jokes. I can still picture the way she'd laugh after landing a particularly sharp comment, like she was winning some invisible contest. Her family laughed, or at least pretended to, and she thrived on that attention. I'd sit in those living rooms, dining rooms, and backyards stuffed with folding chairs and coolers, feeling the weight of it all pressing down on me. In those moments, I wasn't her partner. I was her prop, the easy target she used to make herself look bigger and brighter. At home, things weren't much better. She brought that same energy into our private life, though it was less theatrical. Small jabs, dismissive comments, constant reminders that her family didn't think much of me. It wore me down in ways I can't fully describe. It wasn't like being yelled at or openly fought with. It was quieter but just as damaging. Every insult chipped away at me, and every dismissal made me feel smaller. Eventually, I realized I had completely stopped speaking up. Somewhere along those years, I lost the sound of my own voice. I provided for her, stayed loyal, and showed up when I was supposed to, but inside, I felt hollow. I was living in a marriage where my worth was consistently undermined, not by strangers, coworkers, or enemies, but by the woman I had trusted to build a life with. And what cut the deepest was that she seemed to enjoy it. The breaking point didn't come with any grand spectacle. It wasn't a dramatic fight or sudden betrayal. It happened one ordinary night during another family dinner while her family was at my home for a simple meal. I was clearing dishes when she made her move. "He's really not man enough to handle real responsibility," she said, laughing, glancing at her father as if inviting him to join in. Her parents chuckled softly. I left the room and stepped into the kitchen, my hands still wet from washing the plates. I leaned against the counter, listening to the faint murmurs from the living room. Then a thought hit me so clearly it felt like a whisper from someone else. If my father were alive, he'd never tell me to put up with this. He'd say I deserve better. He'd tell me to stand up and walk away. I wiped my hands and looked at my tired reflection in the sink's window, and I made a decision. Not to shout, not to fight, not to beg for change. I decided to leave. But I wouldn't rush. I wouldn't act out of anger. From that night on, I began preparing. I kept a private notebook where I documented every insult and moment of public humiliation. I saved text messages where she belittled me or mocked me. I didn't know if I'd need those records, but I wanted something that confirmed this happened. I wasn't imagining it. I reached out to a lawyer discreetly to understand how to protect myself. I opened a separate account to move parts of my savings where she couldn't reach them. Bit by bit, I untangled my life from hers while keeping up the act of normalcy. To her, I was still the quiet husband who went along with her jokes and smiled while she took her shots. She had no idea that beneath it all, I was already gone. The final straw came about a year later at Christmas dinner. Her whole family was there, cousins, siblings, grandparents, aunts, and uncles. The house buzzed with chatter and laughter, silverware clinking against plates. I had been waiting for the right moment, and she unwittingly gave it to me. I was sharing a project I'd worked on, something I was genuinely proud of. For a moment, I noticed her cousin nodding, actually interested in what I had to say. Then, like clockwork, she chimed in with her trademark sharp laugh. Don't take him too seriously. He's lucky his company even keeps him around. Honestly, without me pushing him, he'd still be a nobody. Her words rang out across the table. A few laughed, while others shifted uncomfortably, but nobody spoke up. That was her stage. That was her throne. But this time I was ready. The laughter faded, replaced by the clinking of forks and glasses. She sat across from me, shoulders back, chin high, relishing her moment of dominance. This was her routine. Cut me down, get the laugh, bask in the spotlight. But something shifted in me. I set my fork down gently, the sound of metal against porcelain sharper than intended. My heart was steady, not racing or panicked, just calm. I scanned the table. Some of her cousins avoided eye contact while her father reached for another serving of ham, pretending not to notice. And her? She was smiling, already gearing up for the next punchline. Instead, I spoke. You know, I said, my voice steady. You're right. I am lucky. The room fell silent, heads turned, and she froze mid-smile, sensing something in my tone that wasn't in line with her script. I reached into my jacket pocket and pulled out a neatly folded envelope, placing it right in front of her. Merry Christmas, I said. Confusion washed over her as she picked up the envelope, frowning. The table went quiet as she opened it and pulled out the papers. I watched the color drain from her face. What the hell is this? She asked, her voice sharp, humor completely gone. I leaned back in my chair, my tone calm, almost too calm. It's the end. The silence was thick. Chairs creaked as people shifted awkwardly. I could feel every pair of eyes on us, but for once, I didn't feel small. I continued, my words deliberate. I've tolerated the ongoing disrespect, the humiliation, the jokes at my expense. And you were right about one thing, your family will always side with you. That's fine, they can have you. But what you don't realize is that while you were busy tearing me down, I was building myself up. Her hands trembled slightly as she gripped the papers. You can't be serious, she muttered. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't need to. I've already consulted my lawyer. The accounts are separated, the documents are signed, and this house is mine. You won't belittle me anymore. My words seemed to resonate louder than any outburst ever could. Her family sat frozen. Some looked at me while others stared at her as if waiting for someone to break the stillness. For the first time in years, she was speechless. And for the first time in years, I felt like I wasn't. She stared at the papers as though they might change if she glared hard enough. Her fingers gripped the edges so tightly they crumpled. This isn't funny, she snapped, her voice sharper than the clinking silverware. I kept my eyes on her, calm and steady. It's not meant to be funny. It's the truth. I folded my hands on the table, speaking slowly so there was no mistake. It's the end. I've tolerated the constant disrespect, the humiliation, the gaslighting. You made it clear a long time ago that your family will always take your side, and that's fine. Let them. But while you were busy cutting me down, I was preparing myself. I've already spoken to my lawyer. The accounts are separated. The paperwork is done. And this house? It's mine. You don't get to belittle me anymore. The silence that followed wasn't the kind that begged for someone to fill it. It weighed heavy, pressing into every corner of the room. Her mother shifted uncomfortably, opening her mouth as if she wanted to say something, but the words never came. Her father stared down at his plate. Some cousins were wide-eyed, unsure of what to do. And her? She sat frozen, her eyes darting from me to the papers, then to her family, searching for support. This isn't, she stammered. You can't just. Her voice cracked. The confidence she wore so easily was slipping away. But she knew. She could see in my face that this wasn't a bluff. Not some dramatic gesture I'd retract tomorrow. I had already left her. Not tonight, not in this moment, but months ago when I started planning. Tonight was just the unveiling. I pushed my chair back slowly, the legs scraping lightly against the hardwood. "I'm done being the joke at this table," I said, voice steady. "I'm done being the one you build yourself up against. You wanted me small, but I'm not small anymore." The quiet stretched on, thicker and heavier. I stood up, adjusting my jacket and looking around the table. Faces avoided mine. Some shifted in their seats. Others watched with a mix of shock and discomfort. Then I looked back at her. "You've made your choice every time you laughed at my expense. Tonight I made mine." Her hands slapped against the papers as if trying to regain control. "We can talk about this later," she hissed. "Not here, not in front of them." But I shook my head. "No, that's exactly why it's happening here. For years you made sure every insult, every cut, every little performance was delivered in front of an audience. So now they get to see the end of your show." Her jaw tightened, panic flaring in her eyes. She couldn't hide. I leaned in slightly, not angry or cruel, just resolute. "You don't get the last laugh anymore." I straightened up. The room felt so still you could hear the clock ticking in the next room. For once, I wasn't the quiet one. She was. Her mother finally spoke, her voice soft but uneasy. "Maybe we should all—" I raised a hand, cutting her off before she could try to smooth things over. "No, for years you've all laughed at her insults. You let her treat me like dirt and brushed it off as harmless. Do you see what that has cost?" The words hung in the air. No one argued, no one defended her. She tried to recover, her voice rising. "We can fix this. Don't be ridiculous. We'll talk privately. You don't have to do this." But I had already pushed my chair completely back from the table. I looked at her one last time. "Begging me in front of the same people you used to humiliate me in front of doesn't change anything. You had years to treat me with respect. You chose the opposite." Her mouth opened, but no words came out. For the first time, she had no script, no quick comeback, just silence. I turned towards the room at large, gave a small nod, and said evenly, "Merry Christmas." Then I walked out. The night air was cold, but it felt cleaner than anything I'd breathed in for years. I sat in my car parked at the end of the driveway for a moment, just soaking in the quiet. No voices, no laughter at my expense. No one looming over me like a shadow, just stillness. By the time she realized what had happened legally, it was too late. My lawyer had already lined everything up. My accounts were protected, the paperwork was solid, and the house was in my name. She walked away with far less than she expected. Suddenly, all the certainty she had, that her family would shield her, that I'd always be the quiet one who stayed, vanished. Months flew by. I kept on moving forward. I didn't call. I didn't chase her down. I didn't try to explain myself again to those who had never truly listened. Ironically, a few of her cousins eventually reached out quietly, admitting they thought she crossed the line but didn't want to confront her. They said she dominated the room, and no one wanted to become her next target. I listened and nodded, but I didn't dwell on it. Their regret wasn't my burden to carry. As for her, I heard through mutual acquaintances that she was bitter. She hadn't expected me to go through with it. She thought I'd always be in her corner, no matter how much she chipped away at me. Now she was left trying to explain to her family how the man she mocked for years had walked away without a fight and without looking back. The truth is, I didn't leave to hurt her. I didn't leave to make a statement. I left because, for the first time in a long time, I finally listened to myself. And what I heard was simple. You deserve better than being the punchline in your own marriage. So I chose silence, not the silence of weakness, but the silence of freedom. And for the first time in years, that silence felt like peace. Please don't forget to like and subscribe for more stories. And let me know in the comments where you're watching from. Thank you.